This is Dr. Zuhdi Jasser. I'm president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. If I could just have a few minutes of your time today, I wanted to share with you the driving force behind why I do what I do and why American security hangs in the balance. We're witnessing across the world a civil war within Islam, a battle of ideas, as various interpretations of our faith, of the same faith, pursue very different agendas. On one side of the battle are the liberty-minded. Some refer to them as moderate Muslims. After the 9/11 attacks, several of these Muslims began advocating for reform, and many of you have already begun to hear from us reform-minded modern Muslims. We view Islam as a choice, a personal relationship between God and the individual, and we reject the idea that it is our religious obligation to establish Sharia or Islamic law across the globe. But we are certainly not part of the leadership. We're certainly not part of the mass governments across society that are part of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. And we are certainly unable to match the influence of the demagogues, the dictators, the radicals across the planet. But our voice is being heard. The world is watching as these moderate Muslims engage in ideological warfare against the Islamists. More and more Americans and free thinkers in the West, and many of you are a part of that, exactly know what we mean when we say Islamism, theocracy, the theocrats, the Islamists that are part of the problem, that are the problem, versus the liberty-minded Muslims, the reformers, the moderates, modern Muslims that are the solution. There are those Muslims who prefer an Islamic government over secular government that separates religion and state. That is the solution. Islamists practice Islam not only as a faith, but also as a set of political goals. The Islamist ideology or set of beliefs is referred to as Islamism or political Islam. Islamism is entirely incompatible with Western values, and there is no greater threat to humanity than the threat of Islamism. And I think tribute to our success at the American Islamic Forum for Democracy is the fact that many people now are familiar with what Islamism is, with what political Islam is, and the fact that it is the source of radicalism. It is the beginning of that conveyor belt towards terrorism, towards militancy, towards everything that threatens us. There is no greater threat to Islamism than liberty, than freedom, than Muslim reformers. From the Muslim Brotherhood to Iran, to Assad's Syria, from Saudi Arabia's Wahhabis to Turkey's neo-Ottoman radicals under Erdogan, the world is teeming with Islamists, and they're becoming more and more emboldened as they see the West withdraw, as they see the West shirk away from the ideological battle. But we will not, Muslim or non-Muslim, we will not be able to sit this out. And we, especially Muslims, understand. The reformers understand the nuances and the threats of all of these Islamists are. And we are your first line of defense in every respect, from military to government to media to academia and to private sectors. Most importantly, while society tends to focus on those Islamists who have been brainwashed, radicalized to commit acts of violence, terrorism against non-Muslims, terrorism is only one tactic implemented by the Islamists. You must understand. A majority of Islamism in America is subtle, non-violent. Perhaps yet is a greater threat than most Americans are unaware that it exists. Non-violent Islamism is practiced every day in America by Islamist organizations and mosques, spokespersons, and activists who all claim to speak for the American Muslim. They're part of the Islamist establishment. And we, reform-minded, modern Muslims, are the only line of defense against them. And yet they continue to radicalize, they continue to divide our society, and they continue to dominate the microphone. Regardless of whether an Islamist is violent or non-violent, their end goal is the same. A world ruled by Islamic law, by a caliphate, some type of Islamic states cooperation, and subjugation of Western non-Muslim secular societies. For the Islamists, there is no such thing as fellow Americans, unless fellow Americans offer a pathway towards the Islamization of the West or of America. The non-violent Islamist seeks to gradually destroy the secular, non-religious infrastructure of the West and transform it into a system centered on their version of Islam. Your only friends in the Muslim world, moderate Muslims that embrace liberty and freedom, are your greatest assets. And the Islamists seek to destroy those values because there is no greater threat to their mission than liberty-minded Muslims. Islamism remains very active. Liberty-minded Muslims exist across the globe as well. You just don't hear about them as often. We, at the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, believe that we are part of the greatest ability to penetrate the threat of Islamist ideology. It's ultimately up to Muslims to decide which interpretation of Islam will prevail and which will be the outcome of the victor of theocracy versus non-theocrats. That is a very American narrative, isn't it? Honest reform led by devout Muslims is the only solution to the threat. Without reform, the global Islamist movement will not stop, whether it's the Assadist Syrian version, the Khomeinist version, the Muslim Brotherhood version, the Wahhabi Saudi version, the Turkish Ottoman version, the Pakistani Republic version. They will not stop until they're defeated from within by counter-Islamist ideologies. Courageous reformers cannot win this fight alone. The time is now for Americans to side with the Muslim reformers who love the United States and love our Constitution. From the beginning, we've had a dream that future generations might live in a world without the lingering threat of Islamism. That is the legacy that we dream for our kids, for your kids, and for the world. The threat we are fighting is a threat that uses a quarter of the world's population as its constituency. Help us succeed. Help us go beyond the simple approach that we only need to engage Muslims for a few weeks after each terror attack. We cannot succeed in our reform work just by blips after each terror attack. We need your help. Consider making a donation and help us make that dream a reality. With your help, we, you, the West, freedom will win the fight. Join us. Find us at www.aifdemocracy.org. God bless.